If you have questions, write them down. We're about to go ahead and get started. I'm Alexi, your host for the afternoon, yes, the afternoon today, and I'm the CEO and founder of Finessed Media. So I'm very excited to invite you all here. We are going to be welcoming Aimee Berger and Paul Insinna, two industry experts and veterans of the music industry. So to start off, Aimee and Paul, thank you so much for joining us today. And Aimee is a 15-year veteran, is that correct?
22.
22.
But I'll take 15. That'll make me younger.
You still look it. So Aimee is a 22-year veteran of the music industry. She started as a music attorney for Arista Records, and then she went on to essentially help summer camps she went on to help create experiential marketing touring events at summer camp. Provided a platform for music artists that were on the cusp of a quote unquote breakout, and for brands to have a vehicle by which to engage with the tween and teen audience of campers at camp. The tour ran for about 15 years. She continued to work directly with brands, both on property activations as well as growing their digital footprint. And she's currently the talent management for Nicole Ryan from SiriusXM Hits 1 and the Morning Mashup co-host and personality, and singer-songwriter Brett Kulick. So please welcome Aimee Berger. And then Paul Insinna is an entertainment attorney who concentrates in the music industry. Whoever has their mic on, it's a bit loud. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and mute you really quickly. All right, so Paul Insinna has been practicing entertainment for almost 35 years. He's also a personal manager of recording artists, which included in the 90s platinum selling rapper Craig Mack. He's currently managing a new pop artist, Angelina Alexon, who's gone viral on social media with her last 3 music videos. And he's the owner and CEO of a new record label, Pop Trend Music. Over the years, he's also worked with big names such as Frank Dilio, who was a personal manager of Michael Jackson, Prince, and Taylor Dane. Bob Kultura is another former client of his, who was the producer, manager, and publisher of Sting, Les Paul, Arturo Sandoval, and many, many, many more. So please welcome to our event, Paul Insinna and Aimee Berger. Everybody give a round of applause. Woo! And thank you both so much for joining us. So to start off, we have a couple of questions. So essentially the way that all of our events work is typically we'll ask about 4 to 5 questions to start, and then we'll go into a Q&A at about 1:35. So again, if you have questions, please hold them off till the end, or you're welcome to type them out in the chat. But to start off, Aimee and Paul, would you both be willing to share a little bit about how you got started in the music industry? I'll start off with Paul.
On mute, Paul.
Paul, you're on mute.
Paul, on mute.
Unmute. Got me? Hear me?
Yep.
Great. First, let me correct the introduction because you mispronounced Bob Cotterella's name, who's the producer. And he's not a former client. He's still a client. He's been a client of mine for over 20 years now. And he's a multi-Grammy, platinum selling producer. He's great. Okay. Yeah, I started... Actually, I always had a love of music, and in fact, in high school and college years as a teen, I had a band, and I was a performer and a singer and songwriter. Then I went on to law school, realizing that I didn't have the talent to pursue this as a career, although I loved it. And while at Yale Law, I took a course called Entertainment Law, and that immediately got me. I realized that's where I needed to be. I loved music, I loved the law, and that was marrying both of them. After law school, I opened my practice fairly soon. And what I quickly found was, this was about 1990, 91, was that rap was just hitting, but all of the big major entertainment law firms and lawyers didn't want to handle the rappers. They felt it was a flash in the pan, and that they were all thugs. So I gladly went in and started my practice primarily doing rap, and then I went to other things. And in fact, in about 1985, right after Biggie was killed, I announced I wasn't doing rap anymore because rap got so messy back then. I was in the middle of that East Coast, West Coast thing. So I was dealing with Suge Knight. I was dealing with Puffy. I was with Tupac 2 days before he was killed. I knew Biggie very well. So a lot of people besides Biggie and Tupac had gotten shot. It was almost happening on a weekly basis, it seemed like. So I made an announcement I was getting out of rap. And I moved more towards rock and pop, and actually worked for David Bowie's manager in-house for a while. And that's what I've been doing, and I'm still doing that.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. We're so excited to have you today.
Okay, thank you.
And Aimee?
Sure. So, as Alexi said, I did start out at Arista Records 22 years ago. I think when I came into the industry, and Paul probably could say the same, we didn't have social media, we didn't have, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have anything. We barely had email, but, coming in and, trying to figure out how to conquer the music business, for me, it was coming from a place of wanting to be on the business side, eventually make my way into talent management. My mother's side of the family was involved in the entertainment business, but mostly they were the talent, and they were very successful, and they were a lot older than me. So some have passed on, but I think there was a little bit of that starstruck thing going on, just, being fascinated by my own family. But I had no talent. I still don't. And, figured, let's try and help the talent grow. I think now, talent needs to know how to run a business, but business for themselves, especially to not being, taken advantage of. But, I always like to say to my talent, you could learn what I do, you can't do what I do. And that makes you probably more valuable than me. But so at Arista Records, I went to work for 3 years as a lawyer, because I really wanted to understand the other side, again, of the business, even as it played into the mostly transactional. So I never litigated. I didn't do anything on that. As a matter of fact, I'm a member of the Florida bar, because that's where I grew up, and that's where I eventually went to law school. But I never took the New York bar, and I didn't need to, based on New York and other states where, you're mentored by somebody in-house. You don't necessarily need the bar for transactional. So that was a good thing. And after 3 years at Arista, I opened up a talent management company representing songwriters and producers, and some very young pop artists. And I just knew at that point, you don't have an artist yet that is ripe for an automatic audience. Nobody does artist development. And I, again, because my artists were young, they weren't going to be the bands that could get into they could get into a club, but they weren't going to be playing for anybody that was their audience. So I happened to come up with this concept, which was a tour called Camplified, that brought emerging artists, a lot of them newly signed, because it very quickly became not about my own artists alone. It became a business. So, we went to the record labels, we met with them, we met with a number of brands, and we said, we can bring this experience onto summer camp properties where you have a captive audience of kids and teens, tweens, and then you have the whole staff, that many of them were coming from other countries where they spoke English. So the UK, Australia, it was pretty wild how many international staff come over to the US in the summers. So this was really my idea of getting artists in front of a captive audience as early adopters to talk about them once they came home from summer. And then we kind of had an idea, not every artist on each tour, because there were a lot, they would rotate in and out. We just had this idea that many of them, well, not many of them, some of them, because of their record labels and the marketing plan and the push, it would be like, come the Nickelodeon awards or Teen Choice Awards or whatever it was, these kids from camp were going to say, oh my God, I can't believe, so Nick Jonas, was, before he was with his brothers, is wasn't he just at our camp hanging out with us? And now all of a sudden he's on this award show. And again, the kids felt like, they had something to do with that, okay. We know it takes more than just one tour and one audience to break an artist. But I ran that for 15 years, met a lot of talent managers, met a lot of agents, met a lot of lawyers, a lot of obviously a lot of people at the label. Some were already my friends. You become part of a community. And then after 15 years and everything that goes along with that, I was honestly exhausted. I mean, very exhausted. And you get a little older and you realize that that road warrior mentality, even if it's just in the summer, it's intense. I didn't go to every date, but I had to be present. So I actually pivoted and went over to CBS Radio for 2 years. I helped them run their live events and monetize those events. I mean, they were looking to be a lot of what in that world of what iHeartRadio was already doing with, concerts and other things. So I did that for 2 years, and truth be told, CBS Radio was bought by Entercom, and I was blown out of my job. And, that was a little scary because I was enjoying being in-house somewhere, but, I had all I had for the years that I was doing what I was doing. So, happened on a Thursday. On a Friday, I woke up, went into a new office, sat down, did speak to some other agencies, said, maybe there's an opportunity to come in-house again, because I like the chaos and the noise. I really do. I need to hear a lot of noise. Doesn't bother me. Makes me work harder. And then, from there, there weren't situations that were putting themselves. And this was just 3 years ago. This was pre-COVID. So, I said, that's okay. I'm going to take some of my brand clients and, go back into working for me and, eventually find the right partnership, I'm sure. Again, I really have no doubt that that's going to happen. But I had left talent management when Camplified started. It's too much, to do both. And only recently in the last, I say 10 years. So there was a crossover in Camplified where I picked up Nicole Ryan, who is the radio personality on the morning mashup show on Sirius XM's Hits One. So I always like to say, you either know her and love her and you know exactly who she is, or you have no idea what I'm talking about. And that's okay. And what I really did was start to think about talent as a brand onto themselves. So Nicole has done a lot of brand deals. She's moved into, she's still on radio, but she's moved into TV, red carpet correspondent work. The only other thing I'll say is that this year, with no desire to manage an artist ever, I had a little bit of PTSD. It is a difficult, world to be in. Management is a difficult world to be in. You are at the helm and you take shots and your clients get upset, and they can be great, but it's not easy, especially for an artist, in my opinion, over an actor or an actress, or I would say a personality. So but in March, through a situation that I won't bore you all with today, I got convinced, against maybe initially my better judgment, to go back into talent management, and took on this client from Nashville who, you're not supposed to know about right now, but you will very soon, just, for things that he's been doing even before I came in. And I'm actually talking to you all from Montana right now because I live in New York City, but we're in Montana. We're here for a month. He's recording, shooting a documentary. And I'll only say this because I think it's pertinent, I think it's relevant just to know, Montana had a media act passed 2 years ago, 2019, to provide tax credits to bring in more production here to film. And they are literally becoming the next Hollywood Mecca. It's happening because of COVID too. People, you're living in a bubble out here, but we're really out here to talk to some people about building what I'll call a compound, which I think goes hand in hand with the film studios that have been built here. So building a recording studio, housing for artists, and some of that I say, and it sounds like, wow, that's huge, but these are ranches. They have acres and acres of land. A lot of them want to give you the land, partner up with you. You know, there are cast agents out here. There's music supervisors moving out here just because it's you know, an easier place to be. So it'll be very telling to see what happens in the next year. But I came out here to kind of figure it out and shake hands with people in person. So I know that's a lot to say right now, but you know, I think where I'll end on this being that it's a legal panel is 22 years ago when I entered the business as a lawyer. I'm very glad that I had that knowledge of transactional law because there isn't really any contract I can't negotiate. But that doesn't mean I don't need help from the people who practice law every day. But even at CBS, they were like, there's too many things going on at a major company. We can't even get our agreements done. Aimee, can you do the agreement and we'll just have the lawyer here bless it? Because I wasn't technically a lawyer at these companies. But, you know, I kind of like the idea that it's put in my hands, and you know, it's keeps me practicing is in that way. But anyway, not in your traditional sense.
Thank you, Aimee. Well, the reason why we decided to host this event today was because many of the people on the call have always come to us at Finessed Media with questions about what is it like to work with an entertainment attorney? How do I even get started with finding the right one? We'll get a lot of questions about what is the process of working with them and having them negotiate contracts for me. Do either of you have some advice on how to actually start getting connected with attorneys and the correct ones?
Paul, you want to start? You know,
yeah,
and then I'll chime in.
Well, I mean, attorneys, like most other people, will generally take on clients who will pay them. So that's the first thing. I will say there are attorneys who work on percentage bases, but I always try to avoid that in my practice my whole life, and have spoken out against that many times because what you have to be aware of is that when you're looking for an attorney, you're primarily looking for objective advice. That's the main thing you want to get. Whether it be for the contract, whether it be for whether you should bring litigation, whatever it is, you need an objective opinion to review it to give you the sound advice. If you're paying an attorney based on a percentage of the deal or percentage of the litigation that results, the attorney theoretically will lose all objectivity. It's hard for an attorney to spend a week going through a contract with you and with negotiating, and then sit down and say, look, the deal's no good, don't sign, if he's not going to get paid unless it gets signed. Just like it's hard for an attorney to sit down with you for an afternoon, go through all your papers and tell you don't bring the litigation, you don't have a case, you know, if he's on a straight contingency basis. My one point, there are many points to think of, but one is obviously, you know, if you can avoid the percentage or contingency basis deals. I will say sometimes you can avoid it. I mean, obviously some people don't have the wherewithal to hire attorneys on a hourly or a flat fee. Generally, I try to do hourlies or flat fees, or I'll do hourly with I'll cap it. I won't spend over a certain amount of billing. And I have done percentage deals in the past, but I always sit down with the client and explain to them, that's what I just told you now, that I advise against it. But obviously, if you have no choice and you feel comfortable with the lawyer, you know, I guess you can go forward on that basis. But you should be aware going in that the attorney loses objectivity when it's on a percentage basis.
Thank you, Paul. And Aimee?
I mean, I know basically what it was, but I'll answer it. So my bad.
Oh,
go ahead.
Sure.
Just
any advice that you would have on going about the process of finding an attorney to work with, or obtaining the correct or quote unquote correct attorney?
Yeah, you know, I think Paul would probably agree with this. Again, you know, when I started out 22 years ago, and again, I know I was on the side of Arista, and that was actually pretty interesting for me because, you know, look, I know my job was to do right by the label, but, you know, I did find those contracts sometimes, shaking my head because, again, just having family that, really did very well on the songwriter producer side. Mostly it was that type of talent. I looked at some of these agreements sometimes, and, Paul knows Arista Records, at that point, had more, the hip hop coming out of Arista. And, I was uncomfortable sometimes with the agreements. I was trying, I was looking at it through the lens also of the talent side and not so much where I was supposed to be at Arista. I understood what my job was, but, coming out of that, I feel like, when you hire a lawyer, you and they need to feel, and this is my opinion, that it is a partnership of sorts. Like, I never looked at legal as just, I'm your lawyer, send me the contract, let me see what I can do. I'm going to advise you. This is straight up business. I'm going to tell you if it's a bad deal. I'm going to tell you to walk away. Do what you want after that. But I never, and again, maybe it's with the talent management mentality, because I've had artists come to me and say, can you negotiate my contract? Of course I can. I can negotiate your band, contract. But I always felt that it was a partnership, even before the record labels and things changed after Napster, and the business just became very, very, very different. Obviously, streaming, all these things today that we have that we didn't have when I started out, and I'm certain the same for Paul. So I felt like, to get creative, we had to, even creative in our deals, the artist really needed to be aligned with the lawyer, and they needed to feel as if the lawyer was really also, part of the family. Anybody that's on your team, part of the family. We're in this together. And also that, it's mutual respect. I need to respect the artist and understand where they're coming from. But if they're looking to hire me, they have to respect my expertise. They have to, nothing and to hive and hug and close a deal. But if it's not the right deal, it's really my reputation on the line. It may not be even malpractice. But it's my reputation as to what I can close. And, deals in some instances, unless it was a major artist, they've changed a lot. So even from how I may get paid, as Paul said, sometimes a percentage, sometimes billable hours, sometimes a flat fee. Sometimes, I'm going to take the legal out of it for 1 second. Sometimes it was, even a manager and an artist coming to me as a lawyer and saying, maybe we could make you an equity partner in this, almost as if you're serving as general counsel to the artist. So, it really does start with a trust level, and feeling like I like to think of lawyers as people that are clearly not just lawyers. That may be how we start out, but we have to be just as creative, and we have to have a network too, because our job is almost to serve right next to the manager in every aspect of what's going on. You don't have to. You don't have to know marketing, but it's great if you do. And I think that there are amazing attorneys out there who, stay lawyers. They're very specifically lawyers, but they know everybody and they know so much, and they've done so many deals. So actually something did just come to mind. And I know that this is not my words. I know I learned this going to panels myself and to conferences, but if you never, by the way, use a lawyer who is in anything but music. I'm working on a deal right now with a decent actress who's working with my client. I'm not really the lawyer in this, but I'm acting as it because I know how to read the agreement. And she has a huge manager, but her father is negotiated the deal. He is a state lawyer in Florida, and estates and planning, and he's also does litigation. He knows nothing about entertainment law. Can he learn? Does he have a child in this? Or not even a child anymore? Sure. It's not rocket science. But the level of respect and the things that he's saying to me, I'm just looking at him like, this is crazy, because this is not what you do. So I know a lot of people that save money in the beginning that are like, well, my dad's a lawyer, so he'll handle it, or my uncle's a lawyer. The other side, like that, to a deal, and I'm like, I'm a real estate lawyer. Well, that's a little scary. So do not save money by using a lawyer that doesn't have experience, because when I go into any contract negotiation with any lawyer any project, it's a lot easier for the lawyer on the other side and myself to speak in a way that there's mutual respect. Even if we need different things in the contract, they work for their team, I work for my team, but there's mutual respect. It's like, look, I know you're good at your job. I know I'm good at my job. I know I'm not going to get everything I want, but try to meet me in the middle. And let's not start from what they call the C contract. The contract where do not send me a contract. Let's just use a record label, for example, that has the kitchen sink in it of everything you want that I will agree for my artist. That's going to take a lot longer to draft, or to negotiate. Give me the agreement where already I'm never going to say yes to these things. And I've seen, A, B, C, D agreements. If someone signs the D, they're like, oh, great. But, I want to sign the agreement where they've sent to me something that already has taken out the things that I hope they're not trying to think that I'm not going to be able to figure that out. Because then it's going to take a lot longer even for me and my client. And I don't do billable hours, and I don't have the overhead that some people do. I respect when they do, but I don't want to waste that much time. So I think you just need to make sure, number one, you have a lawyer that really is truly an entertainment lawyer, and you need to vibe with them, and you need to know that they're almost looking at you as daughter, son, niece, family, whatever. I feel it has to feel that way, especially nowadays.
Thank you, Aimee. Now, the next question I have for this is actually going to be more directed to Paul, because Paul, you have experience working with some clients that a lot of the people in this audience actually look up to. So I wanted to ask the both of you if you have any advice, and I'll start with you, Paul, on just as an artist manager, because the both of you have experience with artist management. What advice would you have to help an artist or an artist management push their career forward on the business side? A lot of these artists and artist managers are just starting out. What advice could you give them in regards to business?
Sure. Well, first, let me preface this by saying, although I am an artist manager and I have done that for some time, I'm primarily an entertainment lawyer. And I never manage more than one artist at a time. And usually I'm managing an artist because I'm so knocked out by the artist, but also almost as a learning experience. What I found is that lawyers who sit in their ivory towers in their office giving advice but aren't out there on the streets sometimes miss something. And I get clients all the time who come to me who are steered in the wrong direction. So being a manager as well, your boots are on the ground. I'm at the shows. I was at a show last night till 3 in the morning. I just got up half an hour ago. That's why I was a little bit late. Sorry. So I'm dealing with all the things an artist. I'm dealing with all the things an artist is doing from a ground level as opposed to just a legal level. But really, I'm doing that as a learning experience. So when they come in for advice, I can draw upon that. As far as advice to new managers, one of the most important things for a new manager is to get the right attorney. Okay, and to piggyback on what Aimee was saying, especially today, I've been dealing with a remarkable number of so-called entertainment music lawyers who don't know what they're doing. So the fact that they hold themselves out to be an entertainment lawyer isn't necessarily so. You want to get someone who's really been doing this for a long time and knows the ins and outs, because if they just have a general knowledge or they read an entertainment law book or attended a class. Most of those books are outdated and not even written by people who know what they're doing, to be honest with you. So you have to be very careful. I mean, for example, and this just came up, the other day, but in a lot of people don't realize it today still, but a lot of management contracts will provide that if the manager doesn't get the artist a deal within 6 months or a year or something, that the contract is null and void. He can get out of the contract. They have a year to get a record deal, and that's a very common paragraph in a management contract. But that's a very dangerous paragraph for a manager, especially if you're in New York. But even and California, even worse. I mean, because there's such a thing as a talent agency statute. And it says basically that you cannot book shows for your act unless you're licensed as a talent agent. Now, New York has an exception in there that as long as it's incidental. But the problem is if you put in the contract that it's so important for you to get a record deal for this artist, the courts have held that finding a record deal is the same as getting a gig for the artist, and therefore runs afoul of the talent agency statute. So theoretically, and I've seen them all the time, these artists who put this in the contract is worthless. The artist can make that contract void at any time. In New York, it's a crime to violate the talent agency statute. And not to mention, you have to return all the monies you return. You received all over the year. I mean, so these are serious issues that my experience has been, especially lately. I mean, 20 years ago, it seemed like the level of competence was much better on the lawyers' stand. But today, no one seems to know these things. It's really remarkable. So you have to be very careful. So at least in the beginning, it's hard to say because in the beginning you have a less budget, but really in the beginning you need the best lawyer you can get. To get, once you understand things a little bit better, then you could just have a lawyer review some minor points or ask them questions on things you don't get. But in the beginning, when you're really green, you need a guy that really knows what he's talking about, because otherwise you're going to follow the wrong advice and you're going to go down the wrong path. And I see that all the time.
Yeah, that's really great advice. A lot of artists and managers in here, to all of you, read up on music law. If you want to understand how to work in the music industry and how music business works, I strongly, strongly encourage you to learn about music law. You don't need to become a lawyer necessarily, but it will help. Aimee, anything to add to that?
Right. A general knowledge is usually good. Yeah, general knowledge is usually good. And these podcasts are even better than reading up. Because as I said, a lot of times you're reading up things, the information is dated, or it's not complete, or it's written by a guy who really, is not a good lawyer. And that's why he's writing books, because he doesn't have a busy practice. But when you got a podcast where you can actually question the people, that's an important thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I share Paul's sentiments on everything he said, but to his last point, now because we have podcasts, there are some incredible podcasts out there. Some relate to, it could be a legal one, but for example, one that I love listening to, just because I love that every writer that comes on there tells their story from start to finish. And so, you learn all the things that they did right, they did wrong, anything that they suffered. It's very raw and real. And I think we need to be more raw and real as a society, more, authentic. I mean, I told you from the beginning, worked at CBS Radio, Entercom buys the company. I was blown out. I'm not embarrassed by that. That's just what happened, and I had to pivot, and I've seen other people pivot before me. I said, you need to do what you need to do, and otherwise, you're going to be on the ground. So, as far as the podcast and the writer is, I love Ross Golan. I love what he does. I love, every episode is something to learn. And, I think it's very important from a podcast perspective also, or from any perspective, we're all always learning. There is so much I don't know, and then there's the things I do know. So I try to say, I try to say to others, learn about what you don't know, acknowledge what you don't know, but certainly listen to things you do know, because it gives you validation. Like if I think this is really the direction a client of mine needs to go, and I hear somebody say it within a podcast, I don't care if they're 12 years old or 80 years old. I mean, if they've been through something and they say it, it even gives me more validation. I might say to my own client, when they ask me questions, I say, look, I'm going to give you my answers, but don't just take it from me. I didn't make this up. I learned it somewhere at some point in time from some mentor. So I might direct them to certain podcasts. I do listen to a lot of entrepreneurial podcasts, or, people who build up startup companies, which could be, it could be anything. It could be a record label, it could be a publishing company, or it could be a business, of any franchise. But I just think it's interesting to learn, a lot from other people as to what they did, especially when they've become successful and they're willing to keep it, very, very, very raw. I mean, one of the people I follow, if he has a podcast, I don't know, and I don't think that he does, but one of my favorite managers is someone who literally, started in college, didn't know what he was doing, and next thing you know, he's figuring it out. But that's, Marshmello's manager. To me, everything that he did, the idea of, creating the persona that Marshmello creates, the investment deals, the things that Marshmello has gotten involved in that have nothing to do with music, where they've, put him as a, I'll say a brand ambassador of sorts. I just think I love just, a lot of times in the morning, he just, the manager writes, just inspirational quotes, but, knowing him a little bit personally, to me, there's just so much that he has figured out that, I think it's something to mimic. But again, I'm saying that as a manager, I look at him and think, what is he doing? I don't know, is he still in his 20s? Maybe, I'm not, so that's my point of saying you can learn a lot from the next generation now coming into this industry. First of all, they came into it knowing so much more about social media, so many places, even the Twitches of the world. I barely even know what that is. And I'm starting to learn it very quickly now because I know my artist needs it. So, I mean, I have to constantly be learning, as a manager. Awesome. Yeah, I know his name is Mo, but I didn't know if anybody else knew who that was. But yeah, Mo's great.
Awesome. Thank you both. If it's all right with the both of you, we'll go ahead and move on to the Q&A. I know a lot of folks have sent me some questions. If you do have questions, just go ahead and raise your hand and I'll go ahead and choose on you, and you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Alex, I just want to mention, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, good. Well, I forgot to mention, because you asked about tips for artists or managers. By coincidence, yesterday, I had a Facebook anniversary post on my page of an old article I'd written on artist management agreements. So they can look for that on my Facebook page if they're interested.
Oh, awesome. Okay, great. I'll look for it as well, and I can send it out to everybody. Thank you. All right, I saw Tiger Lily's hand go up first. So Tiger Lily, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, go for it.
Sure. Thank you guys both for all of that great knowledge. Yeah, so my name's Tiger Lily, and that's actually what my question is about. So I made my artist name Tiger Lily. It's like my real first name. And then I've become aware that there's like a DJ in Australia who's pretty famous. She's like a DJ and producer who has like the same name. And I've been getting all this mixed advice from everyone, people being like, don't worry about it because she's in another country and she's like a DJ producer, whereas you do pop. And I have other people being like, yeah, just like, it's best to wait because you're still small and see if she like sues you. I don't know. What's kind of your guys' perspective? Is this something you would be worried about or not really?
Well, I could, if you want my advice, I mean, I could throw in and say that if you just started with the name, if you're new to it, it might make sense to get another name. These things have a habit of blowing up in your face. It doesn't matter that they're a DJ or a producer. And I don't even know whether they trademarked it, but they may have trademarked protection as an artist as well, calling themselves a DJ artist. But in any event, it could become problematic. And it's usually easier at this stage to change your name than to wait. And then 2 years from now, when you've got something going, to have to change your name. So if you're not married to that name, you can come up with another name, especially if you're just at the beginnings of your career. I would look for another name just to avoid it.
Cool. Do you guys have any knowledge about, does capitalization, is that something that matters? Like she spells the capitalization on mine is different, or does that totally not matter?
No, the trademark, it really doesn't.
Cool. Thank you.
I think, Alexi, I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. All right, Lily, I saw your hand up next. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you guys both. This was super, super helpful. So I am an artist based in LA, and I am, it's just me right now. And so I have actually been really actively trying to find a music attorney, a music lawyer, as, you know, kind of the first person. And I really connected actually to what you said, Aimee, about it being a partnership. And so I've had a couple of conversations with people who, and also just for context, I'm also currently negotiating a sync representation contract. So, you know, I've sort of been torn because I've had a couple of conversations with people, and I'm getting a vibe that they're sort of more like just transactional, if that makes sense. Like they, you know, I sort of wanted to get a sense from you as far as, you know, how to sort of approach that step, and sort of, you know, how important is it for this lawyer to really believe in you as an artist and want to kind of form that deeper relationship with you? And is that something that I'm sure you guys encountered? And Paul, you were mentioning as well, there's so many different flavors of entertainment lawyer. And so, you know, I guess my general question is, first, like, how important is it that they believe in you as an artist and your craft, your music? And then secondly, like, how do I go and actually find sort of the, you know, that person, the right person? You know, I have kind of an immediate need for a lawyer, but I also would like to wait for the right person, because I really see it as somebody on my team.
My response is that, I mean, although it's nice if they really believe in you as an artist and your music, from a lawyer's standpoint, it's not really essential. That's really the manager. The manager's role is to be your biggest fan, to really believe in his heart and soul that you should be the next big thing, so that he can promote you that way. You're hiring a lawyer primarily to advise you on a contract. The most important thing is that he's an honest, reputable guy, and that he knows what he's doing. It doesn't matter whether he believes in you or not, to be honest. It's nice. It's a nice little extra, but it's not really something that's essential. What's more essential is that you connect with the guy and that you know he knows what he's talking about. As far as the partnership connection with him, I mean, that's something that'll either happen over time or won't happen over time. You're not going to jump in the first deal and that's going to happen. But if after working with him for a while, that may develop. But again, it sounds to me like you're looking for a lawyer to do more of a management hat, as far as steering your career and introducing you to people and setting up deals. Maybe that's what you're looking for. That's more of a manager's role. Attorneys did that to some extent years ago. They do it very less today, but it's never been the attorney's role. And in fact, it's not, and it should never be the reason you're going to an attorney, in my opinion, because attorneys, good attorneys, review contracts, prepare contracts, close deals, and give advice. That's what they're good at. If they're out at clubs, if they're out at shows trying to maneuver, then they're not doing what they should be doing. They're probably going to steer you wrong on your contract. You know, you got to make your own connections, or you got to have a manager make your own connections. The other thing is, a lot of people like to use attorneys to try to introduce them, to bring them to the next level, or even get them record deals. But I always was against that approach, because the reality of it is, people who are going to work with you on a creative level are going to trust the advice of a manager or a producer who's a creative person. If an attorney's saying you're a great artist, what does an attorney know? They don't, you know, they say the attorney's probably, knowing the attorney is probably getting paid to say that, you understand? So it loses its credibility. It's much better, seems like what you're looking for is, first of all, you need an attorney to review the contract, fine. but then you need a manager to do the other things. And if you're trying to find an attorney that's also going to be your manager, you're probably going to sell yourself short and get the wrong attorney, and you're going to regret that because he's not going to do a great job at managing. I'll tell you that much. And if he's not great at being a lawyer and reviewing agreements, he's not going to do a great job at that. And then all of a sudden you're stuck. So get the best guy you can get to handle the contract, and worry about a partnership relationship and someone who's going to bring you to the next level after that, preferably a non-attorney, but he may be your guy after a certain period of time when you guys connect. But right off the bat, you can't make a decision based on that. That's my opinion anyway.
I actually 100% agree with Paul, and I'm going back to just even amazing lawyer friends of mine who truly practice law every day, keep up with everything they're supposed to know. Now they network a lot, because it's just part of the business. There's nothing wrong with them. Of course they're going to know a lot of A&R people. Of course they're going to know CEOs at record companies, because lawyers are, if they're in that business, everybody knows everybody. That's just the way it is. But on to Paul's point, because the industry has changed from royalties to everything else, I truly want, and I'm speaking from the point of view right this minute as for my artists. First of all, as a manager, I cannot be the lawyer for my artists. It's a conflict of interest. It's not good for either of us. And at the end of the day, that can come back to haunt you too, because I have a stake in the game as well. Of course, if a contract comes in from a record label and I'm looking at certain numbers, I see it a certain way. I'm going to advise my client as to my thoughts, but I need to know, and it's critical, that an independent lawyer reviewed that contract for my client, and the word I'll just use is, this is right, this is wrong, so that it was like you had independent representation. They almost need to forget that I am a lawyer, because I think any manager who's been in long enough knows how to read an agreement. You don't need to be a lawyer to read or negotiate an agreement. It's just some of us did go to law school, and we're a part of that. The other thing is, somebody said this to me a while ago, and not only does it hold true, but I just never spoke about it in those words, but now I say it a lot. I feel as an artist, and we'll use that for right now, and I say artist because, again, could be actor, could be actress, and I'm across the board. But as an artist, you are the CEO of your company, the CEO of whoever you are. And now you are going to hire a team to run your company. But at the end of the day, the decision lies with you. But when you hire your company, just like a CEO at any company, you are looking for the best people who will advise you on a day-to-day basis as to for the decisions, but you get to make the decision. It's your decision. I don't make it. I can't make that for you, because I'm not the CEO of the company, and I'm fireable. You're the CEO, you can fire me. So as the CEO, let's just say the manager, think of the manager as the president of the company. Now, as the manager, I go out and I try to find and vet all the people that are going to encompass this team. And when I do that, obviously, I'm going to maybe make suggestions as needed. Hey, these are some great lawyers you should talk to. Some managers feel like, well, they got to find that independently. Well, independently, I mean, how are you going to know who to go to? So, if you're the manager, you make some suggestions, but that lawyer is not my lawyer too. I have a lawyer, and someone that I go to, for anything that I need when I need it. Sometimes just for advice. But when you hire your manager sits in the driver's seat, and they need to help you bring on to your team all the right people at the right time, because some things you don't need right away. And the lawyer is not the person who's supposed to be out there. The lawyers did shop for a long time. You would hear lawyers shopping deals all the time. They used to do it a lot more. They don't really do that now. And without getting totally into that, I understand why. And it's not a great use of their time, and it is exhausting. If they know somebody, they're not going to hide it. If they think you should talk to someone, of course, they want to know that you could potentially get a deal. One thing I want to just say, the sync licensing thing, from representing songwriters and producers, you know, I've worked with a lot of sync houses. I've obviously worked with a lot of music publishers directly. I'm a very big fan of syncs, and I'm a very big fan of it right now, because I have a writer and artist from Nashville, as I said before, who is writing with some really great people with a strong focus in sync right now, because he can't tour. Again, COVID. Where is the most viable place for him to monetize right now his songs? It's in sync, at least for me, and with brands. But still, sometimes brands, it's syncing up songs, or it's doing something else with the brand. But a lot of times it involves music. So I've been very hyper focused on that. And this is not a conversation today about exclusive sync deal versus not exclusive, going with one company. But to me, there are a lot of nuances, and I'm happy to speak to anyone offline about those nuances. But, you know, with certain people that we create sync deals with, and I mean sync houses that are out there licensing for us, I think that, you know, I understand if they need to be exclusive with certain songs that you're handing over to them. You can't have 5 sync houses. Chances are it's going to get to the same person. The other side gets very mad, like, who's representing this song? But a lot of times the sync place will say, what's the body of work you want us to represent for you? But we are exclusively representing that. Keeping in mind that sometimes also a sync house, if you've written the song with someone else, that co-writer could be with another company. And sometimes a sync plate will not take that on. Again, they want to represent the song as a whole. And I understand that. But if I'm going to give them that song, you know, or a body of work, a catalog, I need to know, because all their eggs in one basket. And if your co-writer is even agreeing to that because they're free and clear and they can, you know, you have 2 people on the line, or sorry, my internet's unstable there. Anyway, so, you know, even I'll just say human to human, you know, because again, people do this for me. People have done this for me. You know, if you were thinking about taking on a, you know, a deal with a certain company, like, you know, for sync, you know, I could talk through a couple points with you. I don't need to be the lawyer handling it. I might tell you to go to someone else. I might tell you to go to Paul, you know, I mean, if you want to, but, you know, I mean, I do them, but I just think, you know, you want to make sure there's certain things in there, and that, again, the company is really for real and has a good reputation. And that's pretty easy for me to figure out. You know, it would take me 5 seconds to know. I'm so deep into that world.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
I'd just like to follow up. I'd like to follow up on a couple things Aimee said. First of all, she mentioned that managers know how to read contracts. So you need to be careful of that because, well, there's an old adage, a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing. And I've represented managers who managed Michael Jackson, who managed David Bowie, who managed Janet Jackson. I mean, these guys have been in the business longer than I was alive. And they miss a lot of things. I mean, they're not lawyers by trade. They're doing deal making, but they're not, a lot of these guys are not into the particulars of contracts. And if you're relying on a manager reviewing your agreement, I very much urge you to get, in addition, an objective lawyer to look over it as well.
Yeah.
It's
do
not
not
a matter
do
of
that.
knowing how to read.
Right.
Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Because I happen to wear a lawyer hat, and there are other managers that do. I always say, you know, you have to go independent, you know, because you don't want that. You also don't want that falling back on you. And not a manager should be able to say, we don't need to be know-it-alls. We need to get it right.
Right. You have to understand the shortcomings. Exactly. The second thing is, you mentioned about managers referring lawyers, and you're right. You know, you're probably not going to refer your lawyers. So, but at the same time, artists have gotten into a lot of trouble doing that. And I've dealt with a lot of artists over the years who the deal was terrible. And I said, how'd you get this lawyer? They said the manager gave it to him. So you have to be wary of that. If the manager is going to refer a lawyer to you, the manager should give you half a dozen lawyers for the manager's protection as well. I mean, and for you as well, to sit down with everyone, because if the manager gives you 1 or 2 people and you choose them, the manager is exposed because it might be problematic if the manager has a relationship with the attorney, and you obviously may be exposed because they may not be the right people for you. So you got to be, very careful with some of these things. And the last thing, you were talking about sync licensing. Again, I just want to press upon you that sync licensings are great. I mean, I had clients who did very well with sync licenses, and that more so years ago. Today, there seems to be a higher volume of sync licenses, but less money per deal. But regardless, you got to do your best. And I know within budget constraints and everything, but you got to do your best to get the right person to handle the sync license. Because you want that deal structured properly, and look at it as a learning experience, because once you do one, you'll be okay for the future ones. So get someone who knows what they're doing and bring up all the points, and then the next one, maybe you can handle it yourself, who knows? I mean, or just bounce a few questions off a lawyer, but get it done right. I'm a big believer in that, because people come to my desk all the time after it's too late, the deal is done, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, who did this? So you don't want to be in that boat. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
One thing, I actually want to just add one thing, and I don't know if Paul agrees or disagrees with me on this. And again, all we're here to do is share our knowledge. No, but that, again, because it's mutual respect. That's what I said, lawyer to lawyer.
Okay.
Lately, with some clients that I have helped, again, I don't exclusively manage, not looking to exclusively manage, but have a certain body of work that they've already worked hard themselves to get placed in places. Sometimes when music publishers come along, I'm speaking directly about music publishers at the moment, and say, oh, well, look at what you've done, and we're going to pay you X. Sometimes it's called a multiple. They pay you X advance on, but again, you need a separate lawyer, but I will say to the client, my honesty, I don't think the money is right, or I don't think the points is right, or the structure of the deal. I'll say to them, I don't know if you don't need the money right now. You're not desperate for the money. And, I understand some people are, and sometimes they do need some money, and they, this is their equity they give away. I, will do an admin deal, because an admin deal does not necessarily, obviously give the music publisher ownership in your copyrights, but they may be willing to push it along with you or do work for you that takes that work off your plate. Admin is like having sometimes a personal assistant to handle certain things. And sometimes admin deals turn into publishing deals. Sometimes we get really close with the publisher and we're like, you've been doing a really good job, even though you're taking a less percentage. And I really appreciate that. Maybe we should think about that next step, or even looking at certain thresholds to meet. We go here, and then maybe start to turn something into another deal. But I almost call it, even in management, dating before you get married, because you don't want to get divorced. So even, my client, Brett, and again, there's a family connection there. I met him in March. I did not agree to a contract until June. I could have agreed day one, and I told him, you don't want to do that either. We don't even know each other. We need to spend every day. And that was during quarantine, and that was mostly over FaceTime and Zoom. I didn't meet him until October in Nashville. Now, again, I do know his family, but I didn't know him. Still, it's and again, back to Paul's point about lawyers and making recommendations. It's just, again, it's such a small community that chances are, if you even hire a lawyer independently and they're really, really good, I'm probably good who they are. They're probably going to know who I am, but they also need to know, and they do, they usually do, they're representing you. I've had some horrific arguments with my clients' lawyers, who I love so much, but I didn't like certain things that they were saying or advising of the client on. I didn't agree. I was vocal about it, but I'm like, wow, you're a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. And I just feel like, or just even I'm a manager, just the respect level, like I am so dead against what you're saying. But at the end of the day, that's why they're there. They are independently representing the client. I mean, they weren't giving them bad advice. They just were giving them advice on things that I really dead set thought, wow, that's not the way to go right now. But, you know, I appreciated that they actually almost, I didn't appreciate that they went against me, but I sort of did, because I can't really do in their mind that lawyer was there for them. I mean, look, my clients trust me. If I say, I'm a little concerned about your attorney, I think we might need to go in a different direction, I can say it. But, you know, and these are actually very experienced lawyers, by the way, like with incredible reputations. I will say that time and time again. You're allowed to argue. You're allowed to have a difference of opinion. You know, sometimes you do it in the nicest of ways, but you still agree to disagree.
Awesome.
Yeah, I suppose I agree, especially with respect to the admin deals. That's been going on for many years. I've had over my career many admin deals that start out as an admin deal and turn into a publishing deal. And you're right, if you don't need the money, there usually isn't much reason to do the publishing deal. Although most people today do need the money. But you also got to keep in mind, in this business, one of the most important things to learn in this business is timing. Timing is everything. So sometimes the timing is right to do the publishing deal with the admin deal. So if there's a lot of activity around you and your people are really excited about you and they're giving you a great deal, you may lose that excitement next month. So timing is important, but as a general rule, it's best to hold on to your publishing as long as you possibly can, and to do an admin deal first. Unless you need the money or unless the timing is such that it makes sense at that point. So I agree with that. As far as the lawyers, yeah, I guess we'll have to disagree a little bit. I understand what you were saying, Aimee, and but as you know, as a lawyer, even the appearance of impropriety is an issue. So if you have a relationship with the lawyer and now the lawyer is representing your artist, and then you're having conversations directly with that lawyer, the appearance is that there's something not right. I'm not saying something not right is happening, but you just got to avoid those appearances just for everyone's sake, because they come back to bite everybody in the ass.
I actually, that's a very good point. Let me raise, just say clarity. When I talk if I'm talking to my client's lawyer, I usually ask them, not even usually, I say, I'd like you to be on the phone. I want you to hear everything being said.
Right.
Never
Exactly.
and sometimes, again, the client's like, oh my God, but you and my lawyer, you've been working together now 5 years on me.
It raises these questions, even if it's not true, it raises the question.
Yeah, but Paul is very much correct. As an artist, what do you really need to say to my lawyer that you wouldn't want me to hear and learn, especially if you're talking about my career? So absolutely. I always say to my client, when can we all be on the phone to address this? I'm not going to come back and play messenger that I don't play messenger to my client. I want my client to hear that I was concerned. We have a relationship, we're partners. Like, let's get this right. And let me at least say to the lawyer, do you understand where I'm coming from and why I said this? Sometimes the lawyer's like, I wasn't looking at it that I wasn't thinking 10 years out on this, and not because they're not great lawyers. Right. They just didn't even know in my mind, where was I thinking to take my client in 10 years from now? And I do have to forecast out.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay. I wanted to share an overarching lesson here to all of the folks that are here. Technicalities and in law are so important to recognize. And I'm sharing this with all of you because a lot of the artists and artist managers on here are very green and new to the industry. The reason why I brought Paul and Aimee specifically, as opposed to, I had probably 25 different entertainment attorneys reach out to me about being a part of an event like this. And the reason I reached out to Paul and Aimee was because they're both industry veterans and they've worked in the industry for so long. And it's also important to remember that a lot of their experiences, or not a lot of their experiences, as a lawyer, as Paul was saying early on, an attorney is responsible for being objective. And so as you go about your careers, it's important to recognize that even entertainment lawyers are going to have different perspectives on what they need to be doing in their own careers. in order to help you as an artist or an artist manager. So I wanted to thank both you, Paul, and Aimee for sharing your experiences. Before we head out, I know we're a little bit over time, but any last pieces of advice that you have for someone who is very green, because we have a lot of folks on here that are very new to the industry. Maybe just one last piece of advice that you would give to someone who is new to the industry.
I'll start and just say, let's put it to you this way. I was very green, where we all start from the beginning. We don't get to start from the middle, start from the beginning. I've had a great career. I'm not done. There's many things I want to do. There's many things I have to learn from other people. I think I know it's oversaturated, but I am blown away by the amount of free information now at our fingertips on the internet. Somebody mentioned LinkedIn in the chats before. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. LinkedIn, to me, people have differences of opinions. It's okay. I just have found so many incredible resources through LinkedIn. I speak to a lot of people through LinkedIn. I find people, especially when you ask in the right way, questions that I need answered. I love sitting in on conferences. There's a lot of conferences that I go to that are not, especially, well, they're virtual now, and that makes it even easier. I used to travel all over for them. That does have a cost. But some of these conferences, you may think that they're very outside the box of what you need to know. But for example, and I'm just going to say one just because it's on the tip of my tongue, but I go to Advertising Week, and at Advertising Week, there's a lot of brands, a lot of big companies. It could be the head of marketing at Netflix, CEO, but then you got the Katie Couric speaking there, and you have the podcast companies there. You may say as an artist, I don't need to be at Advertising Week for, but the amount of information it's a different set of information that I need to know now, as a manager, that those are the people whose hands I want to shake. I guess one thing, and again, you're in the beginning, but for me, I do not need to go to one more South by Southwest. I haven't gone in years because, again, it's a personal thing, but South by Southwest is not what it was when we started, out in the industry. It was amazing. It's not the same. So I don't need to go listen to those same people and same things again. I really try to go to things that are out of the norm, because I don't need to shake hands with every friend I already know or ask them how they are. I'll catch up with them on the phone. I want to meet people that are completely different from the people I already know. And again, I know starting out, yes, go to a lot of the music conferences that are out there. And we're very fortunate right now in this horrible, horrific pandemic that they're offered online. Because if you better in this Florida, and if you don't live in New York, oh my God, I mean, it gets really, really expensive. I think we're going to start to see more hybrids of virtual. Hey, you can sign up for virtual. You might have to pay something, or you can come in person. And I hope that's the case for people starting out, that they can actually go and listen in, and it be cost effective for them. Because I think that's the one major obstacle, that you can't sometimes get to something because you can't even afford it. So, I hope that there's a hybrid or some good that comes out of this pandemic.
Thank you. And Paul?
Well, first, I won't take it personal because I spoke at South by Southwest, but no, I spoke at a lot of it.
But did you do it a while ago, or did you do it recently?
Yeah, a while ago.
Yeah, so I'm saying the same thing. I just don't see it as the same conference that I once did. Yeah, used to love it.
But anyway, I will say that I haven't really seen too many podcasts. I've seen one or two, but I do go on. I have been on social media the past few years, in a lot of these chat groups that they talk about music and entertainment. And I can tell you from my experience, you need to be careful because 95% of what I read on there is actually wrong. And I've been thrown off of some groups because I point out that it's wrong so often that they're tired of hearing from me, and they don't want to be, ruin their image or something. So the administrators throw me out. In fact, I think Alexi found me on one of these chat groups, that was one of those chat groups that actually would happen. So it's nothing, there's nothing wrong with going on social media and LinkedIn and all these things and seeing what everybody's saying, but take everything with a grain of salt. The best advice for you to follow is, if it's legal advice, is to get an attorney that represents you, and get the advice from the horse's mouth and not from social media. I mean, because I can tell you, it's almost always wrong. And my last little tip, Alexi brought up about technicalities in the law. I say this all the time. I mean, people will overlook an agreement or say something to you in general, but the reality of it is, the devil is always in the details. So general statements mean nothing in the legal field, and less than nothing in contracts. It's really what the details of the agreement say. So you really got to get into the nitty gritty of an agreement. No one could just glance at an agreement and say, yeah, it sounds fine. You got this royalty and you got that royalty. No, there's a lot more to it. So just try to remember that term. The devil is in the details of all these things, and someone's got to focus on the details. And if you cannot, you got to get someone to focus it for you. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul and Aimee. I hope that was helpful for everybody. If it was, raise the roof. Woo, 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 woo. Cool. So I'm very glad to have had the both of you here. Thank you so much for your advice. We don't have time to answer everybody else's questions, but if you do have questions, Aimee and Paul, is there any way that folks can get a hold of you if they have additional questions or would like consult?
I put my email. I've already put my email on the Google sheet. Some people ask me independently, and I know I put it in the chat also for everyone. I'm happy to answer questions. I think, listen, I think everyone on this Zoom is respectful and understands, Paul and I are very busy. I know we're busy. We're all busy. You guys are busy. I promise you, if you write to me, I will answer you. And I'll say this, and I'm not speaking for Paul, I'm speaking for me. You can nudge me. If I don't answer you, it's because I just couldn't answer you right then and there. Nudge me again every day.
Did we lose you? Am I disconnected?
Some of us are.
I think her internet is
Oh, okay.
unstable.
Well, I'll just say, I mean, I don't know anything about the Google sheet, but I have a few Facebook pages that I post advice and cases that come down, and music articles, and have discussions with all the time. So anybody can find me on Facebook. I have several pages. And like I said, I just recently, yesterday, posted an article on artist management agreements that I've written. That's on that Facebook page. If you want my email, it's nymusiclaw@gmail.com. But check out the Facebook pages. You probably, if you have questions, you'll probably find answers on there, because I post a lot on Facebook. I have my friend page. I have an attorney page, which you call Paul W. Insinna. And then I have my record company page, which is Pop Trend Music. And I guess Alexi could probably put you in touch with those if you need that.
Definitely. Okay, great. Aimee and Paul, again, thank you so much.